Thank you, everyone, for joining for the Secrets of Effective Time Management. I'm actually disappointed I couldn't be there in person. I love visiting London. Had a chance to do a lot of overseas traveling in my younger days. Since kids have come along, that hasn't been quite a thing anymore. But I definitely enjoy the city. So. The focus here today is time management. So we are trying to do more with the time that we have and find that elusive extra hour in the day. So that's where I hope we're going to land by the end of the hour. And I do thank you all for joining for a professional development talk. I know there's lots of super cool SQL stuff going on in this time slot. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to develop yourself on the professional level. So a little bit about me before we get started. My name is Mark Runyon. I am a director of consulting with Improving out of our Atlanta office here in Georgia. In addition to speaking, I enjoy writing as well. I write around leadership and IT management topics for Information Week and the Enterprisers Project. I'm involved in lots of things through Improving. I'm a technical lead on a team of 20. I work with individuals through our path coaching effort to help them realize their professional goals, as well as I coordinate our internal talks series. And in a non-professional context, I am a husband and a father of 2. So all of that is just to tell you that I have a lot of irons in the fire. This is this topic is very close to my heart because if I'm not effectively using my time in my professional calendar, then I'm taking away time from those that matter to me. And I don't normally include personal pictures in my professional slide decks, but I made an exception this time because I spend a large chunk of my life working, as I'm sure most of you do as well. I never want to lose sight of what I'm working for. Time management can help us out with that. If we do time management well, it should help us create that better work-life balance that we're all trying to strive for. It's about maximizing the time that we have instead of stealing that time that's meant for yourself, your family, and the things that you enjoy outside of work. So out of all the topics we could talk on today, why time management? Why did I develop this talk? Why was this important to me? Well, the interesting thing is when work from home became a thing for all of us, as in we were forced into it, once COVID began, this grand experiment brought out the real good and bad of work from home. It wasn't this abstract concept anymore. We actually got to see in real time what work from home looked like at scale. Studies have found that the average worker saves 8.5 hours per week by not commuting. They also see less distraction from coworkers. They're spending 30 minutes less per day talking about non-work topics. 7% less talking to management. But the interesting thing is 70% of people rank work social relationships as important to getting things done. So you start to see the friction here. It's not all wins. There are some drawbacks here. Also, the biggest rub, in my opinion, is 45% of people reported that they are working longer hours before the pandemic than after. After the pandemic than before. So therefore, they're working more nights, they're working more weekends, i.e. time management problems are occurring when we remove the boundaries that are on our work life, and it now kind of edges into our personal life. We need to refine those boundaries in a work from home scenario. Secondly, a coworker asked me to develop this talk a couple of years ago. He came to me as like, you've got a lot of responsibilities. You've got a lot going on. I don't understand how you maintain delivery at a high level. And my response to him at the time was it was basically just chaos management. I did the best with what I had to work with at the time. In the years since, that hasn't been a thing anymore. I've had to be very deliberate about my time management as I have increased my responsibility, as I've taken on new initiatives. Adding that structure has become crucial to getting things done and continuing to deliver at a high level. And then last year, mid-year, early in the year, I hit this space where I'm doing 99 things, but I'm not doing any of them well. It's really hard to make an impact when you're stretched very, very thin. So I had to take a step back and say, okay, well, what's really important here? What can be delegated? What are some things that, where should I be putting my focus? So the key here today is I'm not giving you guys a magic wand. There is no secret formula. This is all about developing new habits. It's making tough choices and really thinking about things differently. So when we dig into time management, it probably helps to ask this essential question: is time management the problem? This may seem like a very clickbaity type headline, and I'm sure you've probably seen it in some context before. But the idea here is time management isn't the problem, or isn't the solution, it's actually the problem. And to a degree, there is some validity there. We could have the best time management strategies in the world, but if we fail to address those underlying issues, we're going to continue to be stressed. We're going to continue to be burnt out. This is going to take more than just tools. We need to make a mindset shift in how we approach our day. So we're going to take a few minutes to discuss some alternative approaches. But the funny thing is you're going to see a lot of these concepts shadow one another. They kind of, they keep sprouting up regardless of what label we put on them or how we approach them. There's a consistency across the spectrum. So our first one we're going to talk about is around the idea of priorities. So the core of it is this idea of the more time that we have, the more work we're going to try to put into that time. And the analogy, I think that's kind of apt here is, say we're at the beach and we're digging a hole in the sand. And it doesn't matter how shallow or how deep we make that hole. The ocean, the tide is going to come in and it's going to fill that hole up, regardless of its depth. That applies for our time as well. So again, we could have the best time management strategies in the world, but for a lot of us, our internal nature is, okay, well, let's find more work to cram into that open space. And that should never be our goal. We should be trying to decrease the load. We should be trying to decrease the stress and resist that impulse to just fill that void. So when we think about our tasks, we are basically, when we take on that new task, we are in effect putting an agreement in place. We have created a pressure to deliver that wasn't there before. And if we need to break that agreement or we need to renegotiate that contract, it adds more stress on top of us. So it can be really helpful to think in terms of priorities instead of time. So say the boss hands you a new priority. Our default here is not to say, I'm sorry, I don't have any bandwidth. I can't take that on, but it's more to shift the focus back to them and say, okay, I am currently working on X, Y, and Z. You're bringing me A. Where would you like me to prioritize A in context of X, Y, and Z? Where does that make sense? Your boss may say, I had no idea you were working on X, Y, and Z. This is nowhere near as important as those things. Let me take this to someone else. So there are activities we do want to take on, and it can become really helpful to block out our calendar first. So here's our current obligations. So as humans, we tend to be really optimistic about our time and our capacity. By blocking off our calendar and putting each one of those current to-dos on our calendar, we can have that complete picture and we can understand our real capacity and really think through, okay, do I have the time to take that on, or am I just kind of fooling myself? On distractions, distractions are going to be a continual theme throughout, but we want to try to minimize those distractions, because when we're not focused on the task at hand, we're not making progress against that pressure. So structure is always going to win over willpower. Figure out what that thing is for you. So maybe it's your phone. Maybe your phone is a huge source of distraction. Put it on the table behind you. So it's not in your line of vision. It's not a source of pain for you in this area. Scheduling 10 minutes, after a meeting, so you can just kind of catch your breath. to digest exactly what was talked about in that previous meeting before going into that next one. Figure out what that structure looks like for you. And then lastly, we're replacing decisions with principles. So I'm sure you've heard the story of Steve Jobs wearing the same black turtleneck to limit his decision fatigue from having to choose an outfit every day. Personally, I think that's kind of taking it to the extreme, but the idea here is we all continually face decisions that have very important consequences. But the problem is we're not equipped with, say, that full set of facts. We always have imperfect information we have to go into those important decisions with. And that combination creates this idea of cognitive overload, that in this state, we're more likely to make errors, and it's going to contribute to our feeling of being overwhelmed. So say I'm trying to lose weight, and I make two different statements here, that I will not eat after 7 p.m. versus I'm going to limit my snacking after 7 p.m. This second statement comes with an infinite number of choices. So what am I going to eat? How much should I eat? Should I even eat at all? Versus our first statement, which just shuts down all of the choices. I'm not going to eat after 7 p.m. It removes that cognitive overload. So our second alternative approach is choice management. And I'm sure we've all been there before, but having that feeling or hearing somebody else say, my time isn't my own, that's a really tough place to get in. It's really frustrating as well when you feel like you don't have control over your own time, that everyone else wants it, and you just can't get a hold, you can't get a grip on it. But the hard truth is we are often our own worst enemy in this regard, due to the choices that we're making. So in this model, we are sitting down, let's say, over a week and tracking our professional and our personal activities, and we're asking these 4 questions right here. So first, which of these activities were proactive versus which of them were reactive? Secondly, was your time spent effectively, and were you engaged at all times? Third, could this task have been delegated? And then lastly, how many times did you say yes when you wish you had said no? And I do need to note on this idea of no, there's lots of people pleasers out there and people who want to be accommodating that find themselves saying yes when they should have said no. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a no. You can be an ally for help. You can be a facilitator by saying no doesn't have to mean no. It can just be, I'm sorry, I don't have the bandwidth, I'm booked, unfortunately, but let me see if I can find you someone else that can help you out with that. Again, we are trying to help out this other person. We are trying to be that facilitator and not just be that another person's just saying no to them and shutting them down and making them feel frustrated. We're trying to help. So in a few slides, we're going to look at the Eisenhower decision matrix, which is going to help us make choices based off of our goals, our values, and our priorities. So our third alternative time management strategy is attention management. And this is the art of focusing on getting things done for the right reasons, in the right places, and at the right moments. So the core of this is the motivation problem. I mean, I'm sure we've all been in this state, this motivational slog where it's just tough to get going, to get started. You really have to muster yourself into action. So take this presentation right here. This is, I enjoy speaking. I have 3 presentations that I regularly give at conferences. I got to the end of last year and it occurred to me that I hadn't developed anything new over the past year. I've still been learning, I've still been making progress. I still have things to talk about, but I hadn't sat down to develop a new talk in that year. So this is a topic that's been near and dear to my heart. So I decided to tackle this on, but getting started was a challenge for me. Just that getting going process. And that motivation, I had to step back and kind of look at the core of that motivation and say, okay, well, what am I trying to accomplish here? Why do I want to create this new talk? It is about, sharing my experience, sharing what I've learned, trying to give back. And, once I kind of got to that internal core of why I wanted to do this, it was a lot easier to get started. I could kind of piggyback off that and really push myself forward to get going. And it's always going to be a struggle, when productivity is a means to an end. Willpower is going to be needed when productivity is the goal. But if you pay attention to why you're excited about that project and who is going to be benefiting from it, you're going to be naturally pulled into it. There's going to be that intrinsic motivation that's going to carry you through. It's also important to focus on, if we're looking at that top statement of the right reasons, places, and moments, it's also very important to focus on that moments piece of it, the when are we tackling this activity? And in Daniel Pink's book, When, he looks at this idea of focusing on your circadian rhythm. We all have an internal clock, an internal state that tells us, here's the time of day when it's going to be most effective for us to be productive. So if you're, say, a morning person, you may put your analytic work at the beginning of your day. Maybe you have your busy work around lunch, and then we do our more creative pursuits in the afternoon. So the key is you're trying to align your work with your internal clock and rearrange your schedule so that you're working with your internal clock instead of against it. And then lastly, again, this idea of distractions. Distractions are not inherently bad. We're not trying to ban distractions. You do need to relax. You do need to take a break. You need to let your mind wander. That is healthy. That is part of your productive day, whether you kind of see it that way or not. But we should put guardrails on that time. How are we going to spend that time? Which distractions are helpful, which are not? Maybe scrolling through my social media feed for 30 minutes at a time doesn't really count as a way that I really want to spend my time. It's just dead time. So maybe we can find more palatable areas of distractions, if you will. So when looking at time management by the numbers, there were 4 statistics that I thought were very interesting as we kind of start off on the topic. 82% of people do not have a time management system. 49% of people have never carried out a time audit on how they spent their time. 91 minutes are the average time wasted in meetings or activities that aren't important to your role. And 2 hours can be saved by spending 10 to 15 minutes a day planning out your day. So the key here in looking at all these numbers can help us understand that this is a pervasive problem that most of us face. And take that third number right there, 91 minutes a day. Think about what you could accomplish if you could wrestle back that 91 minutes. That's 7.5 hours per week. We're going to discuss that. We're going to get into that and see if we can free up that 91 minutes. And I think if we can make even the slightest dent in that number right there, this will be more than worth the time you spent in this hour. So we're going to focus on that in a second. So no time management discussion would be complete without discussing this very large elephant in the room, which is digital distraction. Researchers have demonstrated that the mere presence of a phone makes people less productive. Students are interrupted during studying, take longer to learn the material, and they feel more stressed out. Software provider Rescue Time found that the average person looked at an instant message every 6 minutes. For a third of those people, that number was as high as every 3 minutes. So think about that. Just think about just those numbers right there for a second. How are we ever supposed to keep focus, keep concentration on anything if every 6 minutes our concentration is destroyed? We've got to figure out a way to get a handle on that. So the consequences here is workers typically tend to a task for about 3 minutes before switching to something else. And that's usually electronic communication. But it takes like 20 minutes for them to get back to that previous task. So it's this state of continuous disruption that we're dealing with on a daily basis. So we have to get to a better place with that. It does help to take a step back and say, you know, what is this hold that our devices have over us? What is this hold that our email box has over us, our Slack messages? We are inherently social beings, some of us more so than others. We know that we can reply later to that message, but people need us. We don't want to let others think that we're ignoring them, that we are lessening the importance of their thing. So there is this inner pull that makes us want to reach out, to answer that message, to get back in a timely manner. Our first step here is to get organized. And I would say hyper organized. And first off, this is just my approach. This is a goal. The goal here is to get you thinking. This is not to say you need to follow my approach or you're doing it wrong, but this is to throw some ideas out there. Ultimately, each person needs to find what works best for them. So first and foremost is my notes. I have a Evernote type app that's on my phone, it's on my computer. It keeps everything straight. So I have a note for every person that I interact with, for every project that I'm working on, every feature that I'm working on, for every day of the week, for upcoming events. Just anywhere that I can put detail down on paper, I have a note for it. Take people, for instance. This can be a challenge for me. I interact with probably several dozen people per week. Each one of those conversations has importance. There's something we discuss there. There's probably an action item. There's something we need to discuss the next time we get together. If I don't keep track of all that, I lose it. It's gone. And then I miss stuff. I miss obligations that I've committed to. I miss the little stuff, like say this person went on vacation. Well, you know, as goofy as that sounds, I want to follow up on that. How was your vacation? Did you guys enjoy St. Augustine? Did you guys find any new restaurants that you didn't try out last time? You know, things like that. I want to keep track of those things, and they allow us to have a better, more productive conversation when that thing comes up next time. If I can sit down for the first 5 minutes before that meeting or for that conversation and say, okay, here's where we landed last time. Here's what we needed to follow up on. Here's what we were trying to accomplish. I can be much more productive in that next conversation than if I'm just kind of winging it and hoping for the best. Email. I don't know that anybody has a clean email box. Those people that tell me it's like, yeah, I clean my email box out every week. I'm like, I don't understand you. It must be nice, but we all have too much email and things that in there that should not be there. Maybe it's a newsletter we signed up for long ago. We're not interested anymore. We need to unsubscribe. We need to opt out of that. All of that non-essential stuff needs to go away. So maybe it is a newsletter you do want to read, but it doesn't need to be hitting my email box at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday. So let's create some folders. Let's create some rules to automatically shuffle that content away and store it for when we're ready for it. So that, you know, once a week, once a month, whatever that thing may be, whatever cadence we need to look at that stuff, we can take the time to read and catch up on whatever that thing may be. But those non-essential items do not belong in our focus. They do not belong, you know, within our email box. For some people, email's a real challenge. It can be helpful just to be off Outlook for a while, to set certain times of, you know, this is my productive stretch in the afternoon. I need these 3 hours to make significant progress on my project. I'm going to turn email off. I'm going to turn Slack off or set myself as away. You know, defining that the electronic communication is not going to have a hold over me, that I do have a choice here. I can take actionable measures to not let email rule my life. Your calendars. It's very important that we kind of designate certain blocks of time for productivity. If you know you need 3 hours a day to make progress on whatever project that is that you're working on, go ahead and set that 3 hours on your calendar. You can obviously shift it around if needed, but the key is to make sure that you have a lot of that very important block of time every day so that you can make that progress that you need. So we come back to our 91 minutes of meetings that are unimportant. We really have no place in. You know what these meetings are. You're not really missing anything by not being in them. These can be things like, this was a project I was involved in the past. I don't really have a role in it anymore. I'm just kind of there as a knowledge matter expert, but truthfully, they never call on me. I'm not in the critical path of this thing. You know what those meetings are. We all have them in our schedule. And freeing up your schedule from that 91 minutes worth of meetings can come down to just a sales job. It can be reaching out to that project manager and just saying, hey, if you can give me back this hour in my day, I can make progress on this super critical item that we're trying to deliver next week. And just kind of showing what can be gained by you not being in said meeting. And I would also present it as, yes, I am asking to be out of this meeting, but for that hour block of time, I will be available. If you guys need to pull me in, say at the 30-minute mark, shoot me a Slack message. I'm happy to join. If nothing else, we've now just saved ourselves, 30 minutes of that otherwise hour we would have been in that meeting. So that could be really helpful. I've had some success with that, and results will vary, of course, but the worst that can happen is they say no. So give it a shot. Smartwatch. This is one that's helped me out, but I can see the argument some people would make for this is just another piece of digital distraction that doesn't work for me. You know where you fall on that spectrum. For me, it's helpful as in I can shut down Outlook, I can shut down Teams, I can shut down Slack, and I just get a ding on my watch when a new message comes in, and I can glance at it real quick and I can go back to what I'm looking at. Otherwise, I've got this command central situation going on where I've got all these apps open and I'm trying to focus here, but inevitably my glance is going everywhere else. So a smartwatch really helps me kind of isolate and keep my focus here instead of it being everywhere else. But determine if that works for you. You may decide, no, that's, again, it's now breaking my focus, breaking my rhythm. It's not helping me get to where I want to be. So I'll throw that in your court and you can decide what to do. So let's look at a few time management techniques. So there's lots of different time management techniques out there. So these are just three. These are kind of three of the essential ones. And these are complements of one another. They're not to be used in place of each other. And you may decide that I really like this one or two. I don't really have need for the number three. That works as well. Figure out what works for you. Kind of back to that last thought. So our first one is going to be the Eisenhower Matrix. I'm sure you've kind of figured out by now that the Eisenhower Matrix is named after our 34th president. But you may be thinking to yourself, I can't remember what he accomplished. I'm sure there's a few history geeks out there that know exactly what Eisenhower accomplished, but for the rest of us, it was kind of a long time ago. It was 1953 to 1961 was his administration. So he actually did accomplish quite a lot. The biggest one, I would say, the construction of the interstate highway system. That's pretty huge. He created NASA. He signed the first piece of civil rights legislation since the Civil War. Alaska and Hawaii became states under his watch. So he had a lot on his plate. He had a lot of stuff going on. And this is the method he used to decide what was important, where do I need to put my focus versus what are the things that somebody else can handle or that I really should just cast off completely. So the key here with the Eisenhower Matrix is keeping focus on what matters. Research has shown that our attention is drawn to time-sensitive tasks over tasks that are less urgent, even when the less urgent task offers greater rewards. So that's kind of the crux of what we're getting at here. of really deciding where to put that focus. So our matrix has important items across the top, non-important items across the bottom. On the left side, we have urgent items, and on the right side, we have non-urgent items. So if we make our way around the matrix here, first we'll look at urgent and important. These are things that we have to do right now. We have to complete this immediately or within today. These are the unexpected, deadline-driven. We're basically in firefighter mode here. This can be that critical deadline that gets assigned to you at the last minute. Maybe you're filling in for a sick coworker. You had car troubles on the way to work. You know, these are all things that I can't put this on pause. I still have to get to work. I got to deal with my car that's broken down on the side of the road. It's urgent. We need to take care of it now. So in this firefighter mode, we're all going to occupy the space at some point. It's going to be part of our day-to-day. We can't escape it, but we don't want to live here. Too much time spent here is going to lead to burnout. It's going to lead to stress. So it's going to trigger those feelings that things are out of control. My time is not my own. It's going to rob us of our energy and passion. So it has a place in our life, but we need to isolate it. And we don't need to spend too much time there. Our next one is our non-urgent but important items. These are things that can be scheduled. So this could be, maybe this is project planning. Maybe you're doing system maintenance. This could be networking events. This could be taking up a new exercise routine. These are things that are based on not necessarily problems, but really opportunity and growth. We're being very proactive in this space. We are trying to prioritize the opportunities to grow ourselves. And the nice thing about this space is if we do this right, you know, we can kind of say decrease the number of problems from the urgent and important sector that are going to show up in, say, Q2, if we kind of get ahead of it. So this is really kind of a healthy space. We want to try to spend as much time in as possible. Our third one down here is the urgent but unimportant. These are things that, say, we could delegate to somebody else. This is busy work. This is taking on tasks that are not meaningful to you. This is where automation comes in, you know, fixing your email box to get that stuff out of there that you don't need. Can we, as I'm an app developer myself, you know, can we create a program that takes care of that task for us? This also can be things like, you know, talking to your boss about priorities. You know, can we delegate away one of the priorities that are on our plate and have it go to someone else? And that critical one, learning to say no. That can be very important, you know, within this space. Lastly, we have the not urgent and not important. So this task can pretty much just go away. It is not important. It's not in our critical path. Leisure time. Leisure time is important, but it has a time and a place. It should be very intentional. It should not be, we should not be binge watching the new Ozark season in the middle of our work day. Time and a place, guardrails. So this idea of the urgent are the matters that require immediate attention. There's going to be consequences if we do not complete those things. These are those unavoidable tasks. The important really contributes to our long-term goals, our life values. It requires planning. It requires thoughtful action. So our second technique here is the Pomodoro Technique. This is the idea where sustained attention does not come naturally to humans. Our ability to focus will naturally ebb and flow, and we need to work with the time that we have instead of against it. I'm sure you've all been in that place where you have that one critical item you need to get done in your day. Maybe it's going to take you an hour, but you have the entire day to accomplish. I've got 8 hours to get this one hour task done. The problem is when you go into your day with that mindset, it can be really easy to fall prey to distractions. And you're going to put in all sorts of unimportant stuff in front of that thing that you would rather be doing instead of just tackling that 1 hour task and just getting it done and having it behind you. So remember what we said before, that structure is always going to defeat willpower. So the Pomodoro technique is really simple, but it's very powerful. So it's structuring our day. So we have, say, we start off with 25 minutes worth of work. We have a timer over here that's instilling that sense of urgency. And the goal here is to make as much progress as possible on that thing that we are digging into. After that 25 minutes, we're going to take a 5-minute break, take a breather, reset, just kind of ward off exhaustion. And then next we go back into the 25 minutes worth of work. After 4 of those cycles, we're going to take a 15 to 20-minute break to really relax, kind of reset a little bit, and then go back into our routine. This is super easy to put into practice. You can download a free app on the Focus Keeper for iOS or the Pomodoro Timer Lite for Android. Easy way to get this onto your phone. And the key here is, as humans, we're not wired to multitask. Pomodoro helps us focus and stop multitasking. And it can really help us cut down the interruptions. Say the email Slack problem. We could say the first 5 minutes of my 25 minutes, I'm going to focus on answering emails, answering Slacks, and isolate that time so that the 20 minutes that I'm spending is really productive, really focused, and really zeroed in on what I'm trying to accomplish. The downside of this should be pretty obvious to most of you. Life does not work in 25-minute bursts. I have an hour-long meeting coming up. I'm sure my coworkers are not going to be terribly accommodating when I tell them I need to take a 5-minute break. This is my time, so you guys can put the meeting on hold, and I'll be back in 5 minutes. It doesn't really work out. Maybe your coworkers are more accommodating than mine are, but it's not a thing in my world. So for those times, I basically just press pause. I go to my meeting, I come out, and I unpause. The funny thing about it, though, is when you're in the rhythm, you're going, and it's part of your day. Once I stop my rhythm, it can be tough to kind of get back into the rhythm and get going again. So interesting call out. Time boxing is our third strategy here. And we see this idea, again, of work expanding to fill the time available for its completion, Parkinson's law. With time boxing, some of you may be familiar with this that are in the, say, Agile Scrum space. This is a pretty common idea over there. It's very calendar driven. So we're setting aside fixed amount of time on our calendar for a task. So with that, we need to just make a rough estimate. How much time is this going to take? And then once I reserve that on my calendar, I'm treating it like a meeting. Like I'm going to get started on this activity as soon as it's time as soon as that time comes up on my calendar. Some of us have bigger tasks. Like this is a 10-hour task. I'm going to have to work it over the entire week. Well, let's block off time throughout our week that we're going to accomplish this task. And it can be nice as we work through that, is we can see that progress. We can feel good about our productivity because we are working in that more focused way. We can see the steps getting accomplished, see ourselves making progress. A lot of us have problems with procrastination. So this really forces you to get started. It forces you to get past that procrastination block. There is this psychological phenomenon where we want to finish tasks that we start. I'm sure we've all gone to, say, a bad movie, and for whatever reason, we just didn't say stop when it was very clear that this movie has no redeeming value. We watch it through to the end. It's the same kind of concept of we want to get this thing finished. And then ultimately, time boxing is going to help us organize better. We're putting very strict time limits on how much time we're spending on that task. And kind of the other side of the equation is the perfectionist. So maybe that 2-hour task, you're actually spending 3 hours on it because you're trying to get everything perfect. Well, for those people, it can be really helpful to say, no, you only have 2 hours to work on this. Do the most effective work that you can within that 2-hour stretch. Meetings can be really good to kind of approach in this format of walking into that meeting, setting an agenda, figuring out what the desired output of that meeting is, and putting strict time boundaries on that. So I've got 4 things that we need to discuss in this meeting. If we're 20, 25 after and we're still on the first topic, then we need to reset. We need to go ahead and move on to the next topic. We're not going to cover all 4 areas that we came in here to do. So with those in mind, if you walk out of here today and you're like, well, that was an interesting talk, but you don't actually implement anything, then what have we accomplished here? This is all about forming new habits. Now, habits are ingrained in our daily lives. You know, it feels strange not to do them, like brushing your teeth. Like my wife takes her walk after when I finish my work day every day. It feels super strange to her when she doesn't get that time, when she doesn't get to do that. So we need to block off that time on our calendar every day or once a week, whatever that task, whatever that cadence is for that task. And we need to start slow and understand our limitations. If you've ever heard that maxim, it takes 21 days to develop a new habit, that's a fallacy. It really depends on the person. It varies by person. It also varies by activity. Say I want to start eating chocolate every day. I guarantee you it will take me 1 day to develop that new habit. If I want to start training for a marathon, it's probably going to take me more than 21 days to just get myself out the door consistently every day, and for that to now be my thing. So give yourself grace. That little, it's an easy thing to say, but it's a harder thing to actually put into practice. Next, we need accountability. You know, we need to stay motivated. We need to understand the why. Why are we doing this? What is our internal motivation? So when those inevitable roadblocks come up, we can hurdle them via, you know, just leaning back on that motivation and reminding ourselves why we are doing this. And it's good to reflect on those roadblocks. You know, why I'm sure we've all had activities that we tried to start over and over again in our lives. You know, what did stop us in the past? Why haven't we been regularly practicing this behavior? What could we do differently this time to make sure that we're going to be a success now where we weren't in the past? Next, it can be easy to get discouraged when, say, you miss a session or results aren't coming as quickly as you would like. I'm sure we've all been there. We get excited about a new thing. We're really into it in that week 1, week 2, and then week 3, week 4 comes around, and it's like the excitement's kind of worn off. The news not there anymore, and it can be harder to kind of get ourselves going. But the key here is not get too down on yourselves, understand your limitations, and don't let a daily failure derail yourself. Each day is a new day. You have a new chance to find success. So come into it fresh and with the right mindset. And then lastly, we all probably have activities that, you know, we'd rather not do. It can be helpful to pair, say, an activity we don't particularly care for with one that we really do. Say, cleaning the house and listening to your weekly podcast. You know, pairing those two things together will get you going and get the house cleaning done, but also that podcast you've been really looking forward to. We get a chance to listen to that while we're doing something that we may not want to do. So when we're scoping out new habits, it can be really helpful to look at things like regular sleep, exercise, healthy diet, mindfulness. These things not only improve ourselves professionally, but they can help out our relationships and our mental health. So it's a good idea to kind of, when we're thinking about new habits, to include those into our overall set of things we're looking at. All right, so that wraps me up. Slide deck will be available on the SQL Bits website. I have included a link on every single slide, well, not every single slide, every single slide of substance that you can dig in further to each one of these topics and to read more and to explore. Again, some of these things may resonate with you more than others, so that'll give you a chance to research further. 4 additional links that I've included here that I thought were helpful. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Very popular book by Stephen R. Covey. Great book. A lot of his ideas kind of got sprinkled throughout here. One I really enjoy, kind of one of my go-to books. We didn't discuss delegation a whole lot here, but it can be a very important time management strategy for those who have the capacity to delegate to others. I wrote an article for Enterprisers Project exploring the art of delegation. So the link is there if you want to check that out. Also, this presentation was given as part of our Improving Talks series. There's the YouTube link there. if you want to go back and rewatch part of it, or if you want to get clarification on anything. And then finally, how to focus. This was part of Vox's Explained series on Netflix. Very interesting take around this area and our ability to focus and what gets in the way, and a nice complementary piece if you want to explore that. So that wraps me up. Thank you all. I appreciate, again, your time. They will be providing a feedback link on the I think it's a QR code after this. So please take some time to give me some feedback and tell me how I might be able to make this presentation stronger for the next audience who might see it. I would love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn, Twitter, email. I am at Software Architect at LinkedIn, ASP Programmer on Twitter, and my email is mark.runyon@improving.com. So I know that when we're talking about these things, not in the here and now, they can be kind of abstract. So please reach out to me with any questions you have in the days, weeks ahead that I can help you when you're kind of in the moment. So with that said, I will hand over to the moderator, and if we have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time.
Hello there. No, we don't have any online questions, unless someone here in the room would like to ask Mark something. Nope, seems we're okay. Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you. I appreciate it again, and I hope everyone has a great day at SQL Bits. Hope to see you all soon.